Hello, my name is Amy Vogel, and I'm going to be doing my author study presentation on Eric Carle. Eric Carle was born June 25th, 1929 in Syracuse, New York. He died on May 23rd, 2021. He was the son of Joanna Carle and Eric Carle, who were German immigrants. His father, Eric Carle, was a civil servant. When Eric was 6, his grandmother came to visit from Germany, and she was lonely and missed her family because 3 of her children had moved to the U.S. And Eric's mother was homesick and missed Germany, and so she talked his dad into moving them back home to Germany. And this was in the year 1939, which we know was the beginning of World War II. So when Eric was 6, they moved back to Germany, and Eric's father is drafted into the German army. So in 1945, towards the end of the war, Mr. Carle is taken prisoner by the Soviets and is held as a prisoner of war for several years. And during this time, Eric starts school. He goes to school in Germany, and he grows up in this awful place, this terrible place, which is nothing like the United States. He loved art. He always knew when he was young that he was going to he wanted to be an artist. He loved color. He loved bright things, and it wasn't that way in Germany. It was cold, dark, strict, and things were just different. And he did have one bright spot. He had a teacher that knew of his love of color and line and art, things like that. And he had hidden contraband art books that he would let Eric look at, when no one was around, and that helped to develop his love for art. When Eric was 15, he was conscripted by the German army to dig trenches during the war, and because of that, he saw a lot of traumatic things that deeply affected him. When Eric's father was finally released from the POW camp, he said that he weighed 85 pounds. He had been starved, and this deeply affected him for the rest of his life. His wife said that Eric Carle suffered from PTSD because of the condition that his father was in when he came home from being a prisoner of war. Eric, as he got older, was educated in the State Academy of Fine Arts in Stuttgart. But he always wanted to go back to the United States. He was an American citizen. He was born in the United States, and in 1952, when he was 23, he finally was able to do that. There he met Dorothea, and he married her and had 2 children, Rolf and Kirsten. Because of a lot of the just trauma and just different things, his first marriage did not work out, and they divorced, and Eric met and married Barbara Morrison, also known as Bobby, in 1973, and they married. Bobby was an early childhood educator, which would be fitting for a childhood author. And they stayed married until Bobby's death in 2015. When Eric Carle returned to the United States in 1952. He was 23. He had $40 to his name. And with the help from Leo Leone, he landed a job in New York at the New York Times as a graphic designer in the promotion department. But shortly after he returned, he was drafted into the Army because of his skill with the German language, because he had lived in Germany. So he is in the Army for several years as a translator, and then once he's released, he comes back to New York and works in the corporate world as a graphic artist. He's soon disillusioned, and he leaves the corporate job and becomes a freelance graphic artist. And while he does this, he does an advertisement for chlorotrimazole allergy medicine. And this ad is of a lobster. He uses the technique that he does for many of the books that we'll see in later years, where he paints tissue paper. He uses this in most of his children's books, and it's beautiful. It's a beautiful red lobster, and Bill Martin sees this picture, and it's just a perfect example of what he's looking for the illustrations for his book, Brown Bear, What Do You See? And in 1967, Bill Martin and Eric Carle collaborate for the book, Brown Bear, What Do You See? And Carle later reflects that this opportunity to work with Bill Martin is his life-changing opportunity, and it completely redirects his life. Carle, in 1968, creates his first solo book, 1, 2, 3 to the Zoo. And then the next year, in 1969, he debuts his most famous book, The Very Hungry Caterpillar, which is the one that most everyone knows. A fun fact about The Very Hungry Caterpillar, Eric Carle originally proposed a story called A Week with Willie Worm, and his editor thought the worm sounded gross, and she suggested a caterpillar. Then Carle liked the idea of a butterfly because he really loved color, and so the book was born. Many awards have been received by Carle, book awards and honorary degrees. These are just a few that I've listed. An honorary degree from Williams College, Amherst College, Smith College, Appalachian State University, the Laura Ingalls Wilder Award, which is also, now it's called the Children's Literature Legacy Award. Many honorary degrees, and several international awards. The Nakamori Readers Prize from Japan, Young Critics Award, Best 100 Books in the Netherlands, just many. There's also an Eric Carle Museum in Amherst, Massachusetts. These are some of the works of Eric Carle. Not the first book he published, but the most famous book, The Very Hungry Caterpillar. The small caterpillar is born, and he's born starving, and he eats everything in sight until he gets a stomach ache. And I feel like this is reminiscent of his dad, because his dad was starved when he was a prisoner. And then he eats a leaf, and he builds a cocoon, and when he emerges, he's a beautiful butterfly. And then Mr. Seahorse, Mrs. Seahorse lays her eggs on Mr. Seahorse's belly, and while he's taking care of the eggs, he meets a lot of other dads in the ocean that are also taking care of their children. And all of these books won various awards also. And then A House for Hermit Crab. Hermit Crab discovers he's outgrown his shell, and he moves into a new one, but when he moves into the new one, it's plain. So every month, Crab finds a new friend to help make his home beautiful. And when he outgrows this home, Hermit Crab gives his beautiful home to a smaller crab, and then he begins a search for a new home, and he's excited because he gets to decorate the new house. One funny thing about The House for Hermit Crab, I bought this book off of a used website, Thrift Books, and when I got it in the mail, I didn't actually look at it for a little while, but when I opened it up to look at it, the book had been signed by Eric Carle, and he had actually drawn a little picture of a fish inside it as well. I thought it was really awesome, so I'm going to keep that. This is a list of various works by Eric Carle. This is not all of the works by Eric Carle, but this is just several that he's done. And that is all I have. Thank you very much for listening.